Hi, everyone. Welcome to the virtual program Writing Creative Family History presented by writer Delia Rainey. My name is Rebecca, and I'm the manager of adult services at St. Louis County Library. I'd like to share some brief information before we begin today. We're live right now, and this program is being recorded. This is a webinar, so we cannot see or hear you, but you're still welcome, of course, to submit your questions and comments in the chat box. They'll be addressed at the end. Also, this program is being captioned. To show captions, click the CC button on your Zoom panel near the chat box and select Show Subtitles. You can also select Hide Subtitles if you wish. I'm excited to share that today's presenter will host a number of writing workshops in person at library branches this summer. You can attend Experimenting with Creative Nonfiction at Grants View and Mid County, or attend Writing Your Personal Story at Parkview, Oak Bend, or Rock Road. Registration's already started for the June sessions of those programs, so I'll put a link in the chat box to register. We do have a virtual sign-in sheet for this program, so thank you so much for filling it out before you leave today. Now, I'm happy to introduce today's presenter, Delia Rainey. Thank you so much for being here today with us, Delia. I'll let you take it away.
Hi, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. And thank you for the introduction, Rebecca. I'm gonna share my screen and then we'll get rolling. So let me click those buttons to get that started. Okay, that should be it.
Looks good.
Looks like the screen looks like our marketing media for the program tonight. Thank you so much for coming. This is Writing Creative Family History. It's going to be a creative writing centric program about a topic that I really care about and has been really fruitful for me in my life and in my writing. And I am excited to share this with you. Hold on. Here we go. Let me introduce myself. This is just a quick bio. So my name is Delia Rainey and I'm a writer and musician. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I currently live here. I received my MFA in creative nonfiction from Columbia College Chicago in exactly a year ago, May 2021. Bottle Cap Press published my first physical chapbook called Chromebook in this past September. And you can find some of my recent writing in Riverfront Times, Post Trash, Diagram, New Sinews, and more. You can find out more on my website, deliarainey.com. I currently work as a writing tutor at STLCC Forest Park, and I also play music, and my band is called Dub Nub. Okay, so let's begin just by saying, what is the purpose of this program? Why are we here? Obviously, we're here to think about writing about history in a creative way. And so this isn't a genealogy workshop. It's not a research workshop. It's a workshop about taking what we already have in our knowledge and in our hearts about our family history and exploring that through writing. And the purpose of this program is also to empower us to think about our family's lives as valuable to archive. And at the end, after we think about all those things, we'll have a really good chunk of time to write down some of these histories and thoughts through writing prompts that I've created. Cool. So this topic, family history, is obviously a personal topic, and it means something different to everyone. But the one main question that it all comes around is the question of, where do we come from? And it's a pretty powerful question, and a question that I think we should all be thinking about as we go through this program and get into the writing section. where do we come from? It's a very humanistic question, like the question of that, you know, many of us will be thinking about forever. I've included this image, and there'll be images throughout this slideshow of different nonfiction media of that are family history centric. And this specific image is from a book that my great uncle wrote about my family's history, specifically as Jewish immigrants coming to St. Louis. And he kind of just wrote this book just to share with his family, so that we can remember. And I really love this image of some of my ancestors just hanging out in St. Louis with the beautiful brick houses behind them and a neighbor watching them too. Another thing I like to do in these programs is just really quick set our terms. What is nonfiction creative writing? A lot of people are familiar with fiction and poetry, and sometimes nonfiction isn't as well known as a creative writing genre. So I wanted to begin with my personal definition, which is nonfiction is all about honesty, reality, reflection, and attention. So what we write in nonfiction we write about real life. We write about, we don't lie, we like tell the truth. Otherwise that would be in the more fictional side of things. I mean, we can like make up things, speculate, but all of it's coming from an honest place. And we do a lot of reflecting and paying attention. You may see nonfiction, you may be really familiar with nonfiction creative writing and not even realize it, right? There's so many different subgenres. It's actually just like a super broad genre. So some subgenres of nonfiction are essay, memoir, biography, personal narrative, journalism, documentary, genealogical accounts, diaries, and oral storytelling. Those, to name a few. I bolded the ones that I think best represent what we will be working on today in our writing section of this program. But if I feel like family history is explored a lot in nonfiction, probably because of that question, where do we come from, is such an urgent question for so many people. Another very basic definition slide, because I really like definitions. I think they're really helpful. So we're about to get into history, thinking about history. So I wanted to define what is history. History is a study of past events, especially human affairs. History is the past as a whole, and history is records kept. And as we go on, we may be redefining what, maybe figuring out our own definitions of what is history. Okay, so this next section of my little spiel is, think of this as kind of like, I'm going to be asking some questions like this question here, which is why write about our families? And I want you to be thinking about your own answer to this question. And I know we're not together as in person, and we can't really interact with each other, but if we could, this would be like the discussion section of our workshop where we could all go around and have a deep conversation about these questions. But since we can't, I'm just going to be discussing it alone. But yes, why? Why are we here to write about our families? Why write about our families? Like I said, everyone's gonna have a different answer for this. Everyone has a different reason why you want to write at all. Everyone has a different reason why you're here. So yeah, consider this question personally. Just going to read some writing that I wrote to answer this. Some of us feel we need to write about heritage and family origins and stories so that we won't forget them. If we archive our families, future family members will be able to remember where they came from too. And hence our families won't disappear as fully as they sometimes do in the way history works. Maybe your family has some especially amazing stories you want to archive and share with others, or maybe your family history is hidden to you or painful to you, and you want to figure something out through writing. Some writers say that writing about our families is how we keep them. Writing about our families is the only way we can speak with the dead. Maybe our families are dear to us or complicated to us or mysterious or inspiring or painful or a combination of many of those. And maybe if we write about them, we'll learn more about their lives and learn more about ourselves. Here's another answer to the question why write about our families, which is to redefine history to include marginalized, mundane, or unexplored experiences. So sometimes we write about our family history because of what isn't being talked about. Maybe we don't see our family histories in books. We don't see our family histories in media. We don't see our family structures in literature or art. And we want to have a space. We want to see our families in these spaces. So I encourage all of you to think about your family's journeys and stories as valuable in literature. Maybe some of you, like myself, think that your family's history is quite ordinary. But I am a really strong supporter that regular lives need to be included in history and in literature just as much as fantastical lives or famous ones. And in my opinion, regular lives are just as interesting and sacred. And if we didn't put regular lives in history, we'd have a really inaccurate view of what history is. So written accounts of marginalized or mundane or marginalized mundane experiences allow these experiences to be heard, and maybe other people will relate or think of the world differently, which for me is the whole point of literature and writing. Before we get any further, I also just wanted to have this slide which just says, accept that family history is full of the unknown. Most of us don't know everything about our family histories, and maybe we wish we knew more. Maybe it's frustrating how much we don't know. And so I think that writing about family history, you cannot escape this. You can't escape the unknown. You can't escape these missing pieces. And so as we get into our writing section, don't scare away from this. Include the unknowing into your writing and into the history, because the unknown is a huge part of history. I also wanted to just have this slide, which is what to write about. So here we see an image of a dog from Eileen Miles's memoir Afterglow, which is a memoir about their dog and sometimes gets into their dog's voice. And I wanted to include this because of the excerpt where the dog says, "I'm history too." And so I know family history seems very serious and very much intense, and but it can also be silly and playful. Family history can be our pets. Family history can be our chosen family. It can be our friends. And then I also want us to remember that family history isn't just like events and people. It can also be structures, like houses and pieces of land, and even just in cities that we've lived in, right? It's a very all-encompassing, family history can encompass so much. So it's really an amazing topic to explore for our writing. Just a couple more things about what to write about. Also, oh yeah, the other broad thing about it is that family history can literally be like from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And it also can be from something we did with, or something our families did yesterday. So there's just a huge spectrum. Don't think that you have to only write about things that happened a super long time ago. If you want to write about what you and your family did on Mother's Day, or your Passover Seder, or whatever, you can, that's family history too. One more thing, which is my something that is a misconception about nonfiction, is that it's okay to write about people who are alive. I think a lot of people in nonfiction think you can only write about dead family members, and you have to wait until they die to write about them. But I just want to encourage everyone to that it's okay to write about people who are still alive, and that maybe it's awkward, but it's honestly, it can be just as rewarding as writing about people that are no longer with us. Finally, before we get into our creative writing section, I wanted to share this image from Victoria Chang's multi-genre book called Dear Memory. And my final thought about family history writing, which is history isn't just people, places, things, events, and stories. History is also our feelings. And Victoria Chang says in this collage form, everything but the flowers and books are cut off. History has been narrowed down so much that I can no longer get in. So here we are in our instructions for our writing activity. I hope I didn't go too fast, but we're finally at the writing spot. So maybe I hope that something in your brain's moving and maybe we're ready to write. And even if you're not ready to write, I think this can be a fruitful activity for us all. So here are the instructions. There's going to be 3 prompts this time for 10 minutes each. So if you do the math, we're going to be writing for a while. So make sure you're comfortable. Make sure you have water. Make sure you have your what you like to write with, a favorite notebook, pencils, pens. Maybe you like to type. Make sure you, if you need to take a break and pace around the room, that you can do that too. The prompts are based around 3 themes, which is person, object, and story. And I'll be timing everything, so you don't have to worry about keeping track of the time. I'll be telling you when we have 5 minutes to go and 1 minute to go. Approximately 10 minutes per prompt, because I'm going to read the prompt, and I'm also going to read, for a couple of them, I'm going to read a little bit of an elaboration of the prompt to get us started. My other rules for these guidelines for these activities is to just let the writing happen. It doesn't have to be good. This activity, you don't have to share this with anyone necessarily. This writing can be just for you. So really let yourself go and write about whatever you start writing about. Just let it happen. And also feel free to interpret these prompts however you please. If you want to start drawing, if you want to start, if you really liked one prompt and want to just keep writing that one the whole time, do whatever you want. This is very free form, open-minded space for all types of writers. Some of you may have come in here with knowing exactly what you wanted to write about, and some of you may have come in here having no idea what you're about to write about. And I think that both of those are great, and as long as we're open-minded, hopefully we'll be able to create something exciting today. Okay, that's my introduction for the activity. Is everybody ready to go? Anyone in the chat having an urgent question?
I don't think so, Delia. I think we're ready to go.
Awesome. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to have 10 minutes per prompt, and I will get my timer out.
Delia, just one thing real quick. I noticed a couple people raising their hands in the webinar. Anyone that did that, feel free to submit your questions or comments in the chat box instead.
Are we good on anyone in the chat?
Not yet. So let's go ahead and get started, I guess, Delia.
All right. Thanks. If you do have comments, put them in the chat, but let's go ahead and start with our prompts. All right. Prompt number 1, person. In a numbered list, describe one person in your family. In this list, which can be numbered or bullet point or dashes like a grocery list, list off sentences, words, or short paragraphs, all describing one family member of your choice, near or far to you. It could be someone from long ago, someone you don't know, or someone from up close. You can make a list about everything about them, or just certain things like the foods they like to cook or their mannerisms. Write down everything you know. Write down everything you want to know and can speculate. The list can go on and on. We're about halfway through, 5 more minutes. One more minute. Wrap things up on your list. Okay, moving on to the next prompt. Prompt number 2, object. Write a letter to an inherited thing or an object from your family's past. This letter will start with dear. For example, dear challah cover, cross-stitched by my grandma's mother in the 1940s and given to me by my grandma recently. You can ask the object questions or explain to it your current life or wonder about the object's past. Treat the object like a source of information. We're at the halfway point. 5 more minutes for this prompt. One-minute warning. Okay, we are going to begin our last prompt. Prompt number 3, story. Think of an old family story. Explain the story to a stranger. Explain the story to a family member, and explain the story to yourself. About 5 more minutes. One more minute. All right. We did it. We wrote 3 mini personal narrative, memoir, experimental essays about our family history. And that's all I've got. I hope that you got something out of this, whether you'll use these writings that you created for any kind of personal use. Maybe you have a bigger project you want to get started on, or just something that you'll keep and look at sometime later. So thank you so much for participating. And now is the time for questions or sharing. If you can want to say anything in the chat.
Delia,
Oh,
thank you so much. We've gotten a couple questions so far and also a great comment that I wanted to share with you. Delia, someone says, you have a creative way of looking at things and helping me widen my perspective. This is really very interesting. So thanks, Delia.
thank
It seems
you.
like folks like your prompts. So well done. Kudos. And a question came in, Delia. I know that this program is being recorded, and I'll certainly share a
Yes.
link to the recording in an email follow-up. Either me or someone on my staff will do that. But someone's asking, like, will a copy of the slides be available to participants afterwards? And I'm sorry I didn't ask that question of you before in our technology check. Is that something that you shared last time, or is the recording what we'll be sharing?
I don't know. I can't remember if Sarah shared my slides. It's definitely like we definitely can send it out to the participants if that's something they're interested in. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll go ahead and make sure you have my email address, Delia, and then thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Totally.
I'll make sure that it gets sent to everyone. And then it looks like there's a question that came in. They wanted to ask if you have advice for us on how to properly interview family members for memoirs, like any resources, workbooks, best practices that you'd like to share.
I really am just getting started I don't do a lot of interviews, but I don't have a lot of resources on how to do that, but I will give you my advice if it's something that you're nervous about. I was really, really nervous to interview my great uncle, and I was feeling really shy, and I ended up sending him questions over email, and he emailed me back. And so if just finding ways, if you're more sometimes typing or writing out things instead of saying them out loud is something like that's how I can work better to get my thoughts out, and if I'm feeling a little nervous, that's really the only advice I can think of at the moment for interviews.
It looks like a number of people have already responded that they were surprised at the amount that they wrote from these prompts. Someone wrote 13 pages, and another one was just amazing how much I wrote with your prompt. Those are 2 different people. So that's great.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think I wrote 3 pages, so y'all definitely beat me.
Another question came in, Delia. What's the rationale for explaining like the story to a stranger, to a family member, and to yourself? Like, what's the difference in that prompt, and what were you sort of looking for there? What made you think of those prompts?
I guess I'm just really interested in how we tell stories, and if we think about different audiences, how that will let us say different things. So maybe if we start with the stranger, we'll start with the basics. Here's what happens from point A to point B in this family event, right? And then maybe if we start talking to our family member about it, we can be a little more casual and be like, this happened, and and then maybe if we're talking about the story, explaining the story to ourselves, that's a place where we can be even more honest about the story and maybe get to that super reflective zone that is always can be great to get to in nonfiction.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing your screen so we can see our faces a little bit bigger here. And someone mentioned that they were initially thinking of quitting, and then they hung in there and they had a good writing session. So thank you again for your methods.
Cool. Yeah, it feels like, I don't know, it's always good to just like keep going is how I feel about these kinds of prompts.
So someone's asking, like, in your experience, Delia, how do you take these three different prompts, these three different topics, and sort of meld them into a single story? Is that what you generally do with something like this, or is it more informing something else?
It can lead to that. I know when I started writing, I started writing about, I feel, for me at least, I think that it may seem separate, but you could probably combine them into a 3-part essay if you wanted. But I think the main point of the 3 topics is not necessarily to put them into the same story. It's just to have 3 different ideas that maybe you could elaborate on if you wanted for separate projects. But I always find that they all, when I'm writing these like prompts all in a row like that, they all kind of like speak to each other and connect a little bit.
Yeah. And our final question here, Delia. Sorry, we got 2 more. So thank you for sticking around. There's 2. I think you mentioned some books in your slides that you found helpful. Are there any other examples that you'd recommend, or any other books that you'd recommend?
We had this question last time and I felt like so on the spot that I was like, I froze and I couldn't think of anything. And then I was like, oh, I'll put some stuff in my actual slides this time. So a lot of the stuff from that I included came from this book I recently read called In Memory of Memory by Maria Stepanova. And it's this really, it's kind of a crazy book. It's like 800 pages, but it's all about her family history in Russia. And it's probably it's just such a cool book. So I really recommend that. And but it's a heavy one. So I'm trying to think if there's like a tinier. I also really like this book called Family of Strangers by Deborah Tall. But maybe if people can, if we send my slides out to them, you can be reminded of my other suggestions.
Yeah. Thanks, Delia.
Yeah.
And then I know you talked about like emailing your family with some prompts and everything. When you are like interviewing someone in person, or if you do that, do you recommend, like, do you usually record them? And the question is, do you recommend digital recordings of stories?
Yeah, I really, like I said, honestly, like this topic is even though it's something I'm crazy about, and I write about family history, like almost like not solely, but it's a big topic for me. I haven't gotten into the interview side as much, but I know that I will be doing that eventually, because I feel like I'm a natural archivist. Like I just want to keep people's stories. So if the question is, do I recommend digitally recording stories? I guess the answer is yes, I do recommend that. I don't necessarily do that, but I would like to, for sure.
Wonderful. Delia, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and everyone in attendance, thanks for joining us and exercising those writing chops. If you haven't already, thank you so much for filling out that virtual sign-in sheet. we'll share the results, of course, with Delia. So, and stay tuned for an email that will include a link to the recording. And Delia, thank you for graciously sharing your slides as well. We really appreciate that. So stay tuned. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.